Isn't it kind of wild that, like, 86% of people who get divorced actually get married again within 5 years?
Yeah, that number really jumps out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
86%. It's huge.
Okay, so let's really get into that. Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. This is where we try to get you up to speed fast on big topics. We do the digging, so you don't have to.
And today we're diving into, well, the often quite hidden world of marriage, divorce, and how relationships really work or don't work sometimes.
Exactly. And we're getting our insights from a divorce lawyer, but not just any lawyer. This one deals with, high net worth clients, athletes, celebs.
Right. We're drawing from this really candid interview he gave recently.
Yeah.
It offers a pretty unique window into things.
Yeah, because these aren't your everyday situations, are they? You get this glimpse into the dynamics when the stakes are just incredibly high.
So we'll be touching on, well, just how common divorce actually is,
Mm.
what typically goes wrong, sex and money, the usual suspects,
Yeah.
and prenups, infidelity, that whole messy area, and even what this lawyer personally thinks about love and marriage after seeing it all.
And for you listening, the person who wants to really understand this stuff without getting bogged down, we're aiming to pull out the key insights, those aha moments.
Keep it clear, focused, and hopefully pretty interesting too.
Let's jump in.
Okay, so first up, this stat the expert drops. He says there's basically a 56% chance a first marriage in the U.S. ends in divorce. More than half. What's going on there?
Well, and what's really interesting is he actually thinks that number might be, well, lowballing it.
Really? How so?
He figures if you add in all the people who are technically still married but are, miserable staying together for money reasons, or the kids.
Ah, okay. The ones who haven't officially split.
Exactly. He estimates the real failure rate, like marriages that just aren't working happily, could be maybe 70, even 75%.
Wow. That
Yeah.
that really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It almost makes you question why society pushes marriage so hard. It's just seen as the default next step.
And that leads to this really big question he asks. What problem is marriage actually supposed to solve?
What do you mean?
He uses this analogy, like with simple tools. Yeah. A mug, right? You know exactly what it's for. Its purpose is obvious.
Okay, yeah. To hold coffee.
Right. But with marriage, something so fundamental in our culture, its main job feels less defined, especially when you see those high divorce and unhappiness numbers.
That's a really good point. And then, bam, despite all that,
That 86% figure comes back.
exactly, 86% of people who divorce get remarried within 5 years. That says something huge about wanting partnership.
It really does. That drive for connection, for companionship, it seems incredibly powerful.
Why do you think people jump back in so fast, though, after all the pain?
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are people learning from the past? Or is it just this deep-seated optimism, like the expert suggests? This feeling of, okay, this time it'll be different.
Maybe hoping for that different outcome means thinking more about things like prenups, prenuptial agreements.
Yeah, that's a big one he talks about.
Most people probably just think, okay, prenup means who gets the house if we split up, right?
That's the basic idea, yeah. But the expert gives it a bit more nuance. He calls it a contract setting out the rules of the game for the marriage,
Rules of the game. I like that.
specifically the financial rules if things go south. He sees it as a way for couples to actually decide their own economic setup, instead of just defaulting to whatever the state law says at the time.
Which makes sense because most of us, let's be honest, have no idea what the legal implications of getting married really are.
Right. It's probably one of the biggest legal contracts you'll ever sign, but people just kind of jump in without reading the fine print, so to speak.
And he points out something interesting. The laws themselves can change after you're married, like alimony tax rules or something.
Exactly. Which is pretty weird for a contract, isn't it? Imagine signing a mortgage and then the interest rate rules change halfway through.
Yeah, that wouldn't fly. So, okay, practically, how does a prenup work? Sounds complicated.
He mentions a common model. Pretty simple, actually. Yours, mine, and ours.
Okay.
Basically, what's yours before marriage stays yours.
Yeah.
What's theirs stays theirs. Anything you get together during the marriage, that's the ours pot.
That sounds fairly straightforward, but he also said you can't just sign it and forget it.
No, absolutely not. He really hammers home the need for ongoing money talks. A prenup sets the stage, but you still need to communicate about finances, especially if someone's situation changes, like a new job or inheritance.
Gotcha. Communication is key. Always. He mentioned a really weird prenup clause once, something about weight gain?
Oh yeah, that was wild. It just shows how specific and sometimes kind of personal these things can get.
Oh, what was it?
Apparently, this clause had a financial penalty if one spouse gained over a certain amount of weight.
Seriously. Wow. That's intrusive.
It highlights how prenups can go way beyond just assets and debts sometimes.
Okay, the elephant in the room, though. How do you even suggest a prenup without sounding like you expect the marriage to fail? It feels so awkward.
Definitely a tricky conversation.
Yeah.
But the expert actually reframes it. He suggests thinking of it as like responsible, mature, even romantic.
Romantic? How?
By getting the financial stuff clear and secure up front, you're potentially avoiding huge fights later. It shows you're committed to fairness and being open right from the start. Kind of like romantic security.
Romantic security. Okay, I can see that angle. But he also warned about one partner feeling like pushed into dropping it.
Yeah, that's crucial. It touches on the power balance in the relationship. If someone feels they can't even ask for a prenup without major drama, that might be a red flag about other things too.
Right. Now, what about these fidelity clauses? Putting penalties for cheating into the prenup or even a postnup later on.
Seems logical on the surface, right? Discourage cheating with a financial hit.
Yeah.
But the expert generally thinks they're a bad idea, legally speaking.
Why is that?
Well, for one, how do you legally define cheating? Is it just sex? What about emotional affairs? Sexting. The lines get really blurry really fast, making it hard to enforce in court.
Ah, good point. It's not always black and white.
Plus, he points out, infidelity already has massive consequences. The emotional devastation, maybe breaking up the family, adding a fine. Does it really deter someone more than all that? Probably not. Laws against things don't always stop them, you know.
True. It feels like prenups are getting more common now, though, especially with younger people.
He's definitely seeing that trend. Way more people in their 20s and early 30s asking for them compared to, say, their parents' generation.
Any idea what?
It might suggest maybe a more pragmatic view of marriage.
Yeah.
Less fairy tale, more focus on individual financial security and just clarity.
Interesting shift. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. He brought up this idea of love as an economy. It sounds kind of cold, doesn't it?
It does at first, yeah.
Yeah.
But his take is that love often involves an exchange of value. Not like a transaction exactly, but acknowledging what each person brings.
Like different strength.
Exactly. Maybe one person is super serious, the other brings lightness, one's driven, the other's calming. When it's balanced and works for both people, he sees that exchange as healthy.
Okay, I get that. Complementary qualities.
And this framework even makes him look at the whole gold digger thing a bit differently.
Ah, how so?
He offers this nuanced view. Sometimes, maybe, it's a kind of honest, if unromantic, trade. Like financial security in exchange for youth or beauty, maybe. Both parties are getting something they value.
Huh. That's definitely challenging the usual narrative. But he did say he gets uneasy about big imbalances, right?
Yeah, he does draw a line there.
Yeah.
Especially when there's a huge money difference and not much else connecting the couple. No shared interests, no obvious spark. He worries the wealthier partner might be kind of deluding themselves about why the other person is really there.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, infidelity, cheating. It comes up so often in divorce talk. What's the expert's perspective?
He confirms, yeah, it's super common in the cases he sees. But, and this is key, he sees it more as a symptom of problems that were already there.
Not the single cause that blew everything up.
Often not. By the time someone cheats, there's usually a history of disconnection, resentment, unhappiness already brewing. The affair is like the final straw, or maybe a consequence of the existing issues.
What about lack of sex in a marriage? How big a factor is that? Hard to measure, I guess.
Very hard to quantify, yeah. But he definitely believes a major drop-off in intimacy, or sex stopping altogether, is usually a huge red flag. It signals deeper problems with connection, both emotional and physical.
He also mentioned men and women sometimes see infidelity differently.
Yeah, he's observed this sort of traditional difference. When men find out their partner cheated, they tend to focus more on the physical act.
Okay.
Whereas women, when their partner cheats, are often more hurt or concerned about the emotional connection their partner formed with the other person.
Interesting distinction. And wow, he's seen some extreme stuff in his work, right? Double lives, affairs with the nanny.
Oh, absolutely. Some stories are just jaw-dropping. It really shows the lengths people will go to, the secrets they can keep. He even has a theory about the whole nanny thing with wealthy clients.
Ooh, do tell. What's the theory?
Well, he sort of speculates that the nanny can represent some wife-like qualities, good with kids, supportive, but without the same independence or maybe the same history, or baggage.
And the power dynamic is totally different too. Employer-employee.
Exactly. Less complex, perhaps.
Yeah.
He also wonders if maybe the nanny represents a version of the wife before the stresses of motherhood, someone who still has more of their own separate identity.
Which brings up his advice for wives and really anyone in a partnership to keep their own interests, right?
Yes, super important. He stresses maintaining your own identity, your own passions, not letting the relationship completely define you. Remember who you were when you first attracted each other, two individuals.
That's such good advice. It's also kind of sad to hear him say infidelity happens even in seemingly happy relationships.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's not always about hate or misery. He points out it's been around forever, it's in the Ten Commandments. Suggests it's a really complex part of human nature.
He even theorized that a lot of male drive is tied to attracting partners.
On a deep, maybe biological level, yeah. That's his take on one potential driver behind it, historically and maybe still today.
Okay, another big one, money. He says fights about money are often about more than just dollars and cents.
Totally. He sees money often representing things like power, control, freedom, security within the relationship.
And people find it so hard to talk about.
Exactly. There's this societal awkwardness around money talk, which just lets problems fester in a marriage. Resentment builds quietly.
And big changes like job loss can really shake things up.
Especially, he observes, when the man in a heterosexual couple loses his job. It seems to hit traditional provider roles hard and can be a major trigger for divorce.
More so than if the woman loses her job.
Interestingly, in his experience, yes, doesn't seem to have the same destabilizing effect quite as often, though obviously any job loss is stressful.
During a divorce, you have to show your finances, right? He called it mandatory discovery.
Yeah, that's the legal term.
Mm.
Both sides have to lay their financial cards on the table. He says people try to hide assets, sure, but it's getting harder. There's usually a paper trail somewhere.
Like trying to move money right before filing?
Exactly. That's called a transfer in contemplation of divorce, and courts can often see through that and pull the assets back into the marital pot.
And it's not just assets, it's debts too, right? Need the full picture.
Absolutely crucial. Understand the debts as much as the assets. He also mentioned how sudden windfalls, like a lottery win, can actually complicate things massively in a divorce.
Right, you'd think it would solve problems. Okay, what about different relationship structures? LGBTQ plus couples, open relationships.
He generally sees similar core dynamics in LGBTQ plus relationships. Love, conflict, money issues. They're human issues.
But maybe some differences too.
He suggests that maybe because LGBTQ plus couples have historically been outside the norm, there might be more flexibility, less rigid adherence to traditional scripts about how relationships should work.
Makes sense. And open relationships, what's his take?
He admits his view is skewed because he usually only sees the ones that don't work out, the ones ending in divorce.
Okay. So he's seeing the failures.
Right. So based on that limited sample, he hasn't seen many non-monogamous relationships go the distance successfully long-term. But he does acknowledge there might be plenty of don't ask, don't tell arrangements happening under the radar in seemingly monogamous couples.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk prevention. Preventative maintenance for relationships. This sounds like the stuff that keeps you out of his office.
Exactly. This is maybe the most important part. He really emphasizes paying attention to your own feelings and your partner's feelings and then actually talking about them.
Sounds simple, but it's hard.
So hard. He thinks most problems stem from not really knowing what you want, or knowing it but not knowing how to ask for it or express it.
So what does this maintenance look like day to day?
It can be small things, little courtesies, leaving a nice note saying thank you, but also the bigger stuff. Having those potentially awkward chats about your connection, attraction, satisfaction, including sex.
Being proactive about checking in.
Yes. He even mentioned a technique called hit send now.
What's that?
The idea is, for tough conversations, maybe write down your feelings or concerns clearly and honestly. Then hit send. Share it with your partner, not necessarily to start a fight, but to open the door for a proper discussion, like sending an important email you need them to think about.
Kind of lowers the initial confrontation, gives them time to process.
Exactly. It's about dealing with the small issues before they become huge mountains. Like, it's easier to maintain a healthy weight than to lose 50 pounds, right?
Good analogy. Keep up with the small things.
He also mentioned Jordan Peterson's advice about really listening to your partner regularly, like setting aside dedicated time just to hear them out.
That takes effort.
It does. And the expert believes that sometimes you need that discomfort. Pushing through awkward conversations is often where growth and deeper connection happen.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the expert himself. After seeing marriages crumble daily, he still calls himself a romantic. That's surprising.
It really is. But he makes a distinction. He loves the idea of love, but he sees marriage as just one possible container for it, a framework that should help love flourish, but isn't the same thing as love itself.
So he values marriage, but maybe not unconditionally.
He values the symbolism, the public declaration of commitment, but he does question if it's always necessary or even always beneficial for everyone. He's seen too much to think it's a magic bullet.
He encourages thinking of relationships like chapters in a book.
Yeah, I like that. An ending doesn't mean the whole book or that chapter was a failure. It's about the experience and what you learned along the way.
And comparing your relationship to real ones, not fairy tales.
Crucial point. Compare yourself to other real, messy, imperfect relationships, not some Hollywood ideal.
And his own definition of true love. That was quite moving.
It was. He said it's basically feeling joy simply because another person is happy.
Simple but profound.
And when asked when he first felt it, he didn't talk about romantic partners initially. He told this sweet story about his dad saving him the best slice of pizza, a totally selfless gesture, and talked about his kids, his pets.
Ah, so love in many forms. It sounds like seeing how fragile things can be actually made him value love more.
I think so, yeah. He sees how easily it can break, how transient it can be, which makes witnessing real connection feel even more precious and important to him.
Yeah.
He's definitely not cynical, despite everything.
Wow. Okay, this has been a lot to think about. Such a fascinating deep dive.
Definitely.
For me, the big things were that crazy remarriage stat, just how detailed and weird prenups can get, that whole love as an economy idea.
Yeah, that was thought-provoking.
And definitely the importance of that preventative maintenance, doing the small things consistently.
And hopefully for you, our listener, this deep dive gives you a richer, maybe more realistic understanding of relationships and marriage, drawing on someone who's really seen it all from a unique angle.
It shows the legal side, but also the deeply human side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These are complex things we're talking about.
So maybe here's a final thought to chew on, inspired by the expert. Think about the problem marriage is meant to solve in your life, or maybe in the lives of people you know. Is it the right tool for that job? Always.
And building on that, what practical preventative maintenance could you start doing, even small things, to strengthen the important relationships in your life, romantic or otherwise?
Definitely food for thought. Worth reflecting on long after this deep dive ends.